So if you read any major existentialist texts from the 1940s, from 1942 to 1946, particularly by Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, you will find that they refer to human beings as a lack. We are a lack. So what does it mean to be a lack? That's the question I'm sort of going to pursue a little bit in this video. And to help to explain that, I'm going to rely a lot on being in nothingness, which is the sort of central theoretical text of existentialism, especially during this period. Beauvoir refers to it all the time. Sartre himself uses it and refers back to it throughout his works of this period. So I strongly recommend Sarah Richmond's new translation of Being in Nothingness. I'm working through that right now. Hazel Barnes's translation has been the standard. It's good, it's widely available, it's inexpensive, so I think that would do anyone well if they needed to find the book a little cheaper than the new edition is. But I suspect Sarah Richmond's translation will become the sort of academic standard. Has a very good sort of scholarly apparatus, notes on translation, and that kind of thing. So strongly recommend that. In Being in Nothingness, Sartre takes up this thesis that is advanced by Husserl and Brentano before Husserl, and that is that consciousness has an intentional structure. In its most basic form, that just means consciousness is always conscious of something. It could be an object that's right there in front of you, a cup on the table, a tree out your window, whatever. Or it could be something imaginary, something you're thinking, daydreaming, a memory that you have, or something like that. So it need not be some concrete thing right in front of you that you're perceiving with the senses, although often intentional objects are just that. So what this means, though, and what Sartre is really interested in pursuing, is that consciousness is structured by something that's not itself part of that consciousness. I'm conscious of things that aren't me. And this very fundamental act of negation is philosophically important for Sartre. And a lot of the text of Being in Nothingness is trying to think through this fundamental act of negation that seems to be at the heart of consciousness. Sartre says that nothingness lies coiled in the heart of being like a worm, right? So nothingness is always there haunting being, and particularly the kind of being that we are as conscious, because we're always conscious, whatever it is we're conscious of what's not us, of something else, some other thing. And anytime I identify a particular object as something, as a pen, that's a cup, that's a plant, that's a lamp, whatever, there's a whole other series of negations. It's a lamp and not something else. To identify a pen lying on the table, I have to be able to say, there is the pen, and it's not the piece of paper it's lying on, or the computer that it's next to, or the window that I can see behind it. The pen is what it is, and it's not any of these other things. So in order to identify objects, to be conscious of them in the first place, there's this very robust sense of negation always in operation. In order to make something stand out from the background, I have to say, there's the thing, and it's not part of the background. It's what I want to focus on and what I want to draw my attention to. So this problem, or this way of thinking about consciousness, is deepened by Sartre, the idea of this nothingness at the heart of our being. So he makes a technical distinction between things that exist in themselves, the in itself, and the kind of being that is marked by consciousness and its intentional structure, the for itself. So the in itself and the for itself. The in itself is a completely full. It's a totally determined in its being. It can't be anything other than it is. It is what it is. The for itself, however, the kind of thing that has consciousness, is full of possibilities. It is not strictly identical the way the in itself is. It is moving into the future. It is aware of this future. It has sort of goals and hopes and dreams for the future. It's concerned with its own being, with its own existence. It worries about itself. It takes measures to try to secure its existence. It has values and all kinds of things like that. So, this distinction between the in itself and the for itself is very important for existentialism broadly and for being a nothingness in particular. And the for itself is this being that is a lack. It's conscious of what it's not. It is worried and projects itself into a future that is not yet. And it also has a past that is dragging behind it. That is what it has been. It's no longer its past right now, but its past appears to it as what it has been. So there's this weird relationship between the for itself and the in itself. On the one hand, I can recognize certain features of myself that are like an object. My body. It grows, it changes. I don't always choose things about it. What color my skin is, how tall I grew to be. I can exert certain measures of control over my body in an attempt to alter it, but there's a sense in which my body is just given to me, and I have to sort of negotiate or navigate the world with the body that I have. Likewise, when I make choices, those become objectified in the past. My past appears to me like an object. It's fixed. I can't change it. I can change how I think about it, and I can try to approach it differently, but once I commit an act, it takes on the objective character of an object as it sinks into the past. And now I have to act in the face of what has been. You went to this school at this time, in this community, with these people, with this family, and this socioeconomic background, and so on, and all of that stuff is, it's in the past. It is what it is now, and you have to act sort of in the aftermath relative to that. But your future is still out there, undecided, on the other hand, and you are trying to negotiate those possibilities, actualize some, negate others, and so on. But what this means for the for itself then has this weird spread. It's like spread out over the time. Some of it's in the past following it, some of it's projected into the future. The present is this weird kind of razor's edge of being conscious of objects that are not me, conscious of a future toward which I'm moving, of a past that I'm not yet. What's going on? And right here now. Sartre calls this the decompression of being. So, an object that is in itself is totally self-identical. It is just full of being. It is there being what it is. The for itself, though, is not self-identical in this way. So this is another important element of what it means to be a lack. You never completely coincide with yourself. Now, what does that mean? Let's unpack this sort of decompression. There's always a kind of weird doubling in consciousness, right? On the one hand, I'm going through my everyday life, and I'm just having sort of experiences. Things are appearing to me, I see stuff, I'm sort of going about my business. I'm not really quite reflecting on my own experiences or anything yet. I'm just kind of cruising through the day. Kind of autopilot type of thing, right? Just going about my business. Sometimes, though, I want to move out of this sort of basic level consciousness where I'm just doing my thing. And I want to start reflecting on myself. I want to start thinking about the fact that I'm conscious, about my own state of mind, about what my project is and what I want to do. Then I start to thematize things a little bit. I start to sketch out my project in explicit detail. Oh, so my day-to-day life, I'm involved in this project of going to school. Okay, well, why do I want to do that? Well, because I want to graduate. Maybe it will help me get a job or something like that. And to do this project, I have to take these classes, and I have to get a certain grade, and I have to. So now I'm thematizing the whole thing, and I'm starting to like flesh out in a more robust way what that project actually looks like in the concrete, and what I need to do, and when I need to do it by. Those things that are out there in the future, due dates, and deadlines, and that kind of stuff. All of that. When I shift and I start to then reflect on my own existence, here's where we can see that decompression of being real clearly as we can see something like this. I mean, we're both the thing that's doing the reflecting, so we are reflecting on our own experience and our own projects and commitments and all that, but we're also the thing that's reflected on. So we're caught in this pool between reflecting, reflected, reflecting, reflected. And we're both of those things. We are the one that's doing the reflecting, and we're the one who's doing the reflected on. But we've teased ourselves apart by doing this. We've presented ourself as the object of which we are then conscious. So there's that decompression of being. We're not fully coincidental with our own self. We're what Sartre calls a being of distance. We're separated from ourselves as the reflected reflecting between these two poles. Because remember, as intentional, consciousness is always conscious of what it's not, of the object that's not me. But if I make myself into the object of which I am conscious, that is supposed to be me, but it can't be exactly, right? So Sartre has this phrase that he repeats, and it's kind of cheeky, but he takes it to be philosophically significant, that I am the being that I'm not, while being not what I am. So I become conscious of myself, but as the object of which I'm conscious, I'm not me. So there's this, again, that decompression of being, that doubling, at least, that consciousness undergoes when it starts to reflect on itself. So here now we're getting a little bit more at the heart of this I am a lack issue. Because consciousness is essentially nothingness, then. It is this empty place where things appear. The objects of which we're conscious appear to us because of this fundamental movement of negation. And because of this negation, again, that lies at the heart of consciousness, I'm never self-coincidental. I always am separated from myself by this distance, by this movement, both into the future, which drags my past along with it, which I'm not any longer my past, and I'm not yet those possibilities in the future, and I am not coincidental with the object of which I am presently conscious, right now, in this moment. So there's something always missing. Here I am talking to you, I'm busy being this professor guy, right? But I'm not ever a professor fully. That doesn't exhaust my being, and I can't ever coincide with being a professor. I'm always like a little bit more than that. I'm ahead of myself in the future. I'm always a little bit less than that because I can't totally fulfill the role completely. I have other things I'm worried about, stuff going on. When I get home, I need to clean this or that, or what am I going to have for dinner? So I'm never totally, fully determined and inhabiting that, right? So I'm always kind of lacking. I'm always kind of missing. This is the English lack is doing a little bit of work here, where the French plays a little bit more on this missing, kind of missing the mark, you're lacking something. Because again, what has full being, what completely coincides with itself, is the in itself. The pen is a pen. But I can't ever have that full self coincidence. So I can't be a professor or a student or a father, or in the same way that a pen can be a pen. I'm always kind of missing. I can't fully integrate myself into the world. I can't completely coincide with the object. If I did that, I wouldn't be able to be conscious of it anymore. I have to have that distance of negation in order for the object to appear in front of me as the object of which I am conscious. If I don't have that distance that's provided by and opened up through negation, then the object can't stand before me. It can't become present to me as the object. And so I can't totally coincide with anything, even my own self. If I totally coincided with myself as a professor or as a student or as a waiter, it's one of Sartre's famous examples in Being in Nothingness, the play this guy who's a waiter. He's playing at being a waiter because he can never coincide with that role fully. If I did that, I would cease to be conscious of myself as a waiter or professor or student or whatever. I would be totally taken up and determined by that being, and I wouldn't have any possibility to be anything else. So it's not like we say, oh, consciousness is basically nothingness, and people think that sounds sort of scary or depressing or something like that. But for Sartre, this is exactly very important, because this is where my possibilities come from. It's why I can be something other than what I am right now, other than what I'm trying to be, let's say, right now. I don't have to sit here and be this professor guy all day or all night, and aren't we all grateful for that, probably, right? I go doing other things, right? And I'm not determined by being a professor to do those other things in some deterministically professorial way. I can break character and joke and, be sometimes like a cook or when I'm making dinner. But again, it's sort of a trick of language, because I say I can be a cook. Not really. I'll never coincide completely with the being of the cook as an idea of me. So again, that's why they say a lack, because I'll never completely fill or be filled by that being, totally determined by it. People say things like, I am angry. And Sartre's like, well, yes, you feel angry, you might do certain things out of anger or something like that, but you don't possess some deep inner quality of anger that propels you in this way, right? You never totally coincide with any of those things. So that's the basic idea of what it means to be a lack. You are not totally determined as a being. You have possibilities that you can choose between, but you'll never fully be taken up and determined by any of those possibilities. And you'll never coincide with the object of your consciousness, not even your own self. You're incomplete. You still have the future out there to live in however way you decide, according to the existentialist, right? So they view it as a kind of positive thing, in a way, to be a lack. This will be really important in Beauvoir's Ethics, for example, when she talks about things like failure, that you fail to be one type of being totally. And again, this can be kind of a bummer, failing to be the thing that you want to be. It could be psychologically distressing, but it's also exciting possibility, because you're always failing to be any one particular thing, you're free, and it's possible for you to be a variety of other things, to try to be them, let's say. The language, again, is tricky, because even myself, I fall back on wanting to say, I can be this, or you can turn around and be that. And there's a sense in which that's true, in which you can perform actions that would be described as brave, or as creative or whatever. But you're never going to totally be creative. You'll never coincide completely with the being of creativity or the being of courage or something like that. Um, so I think that that is probably the major theoretical components that you'll need to understand this talk of a lack. What does that mean to be a lack when the existentialists talk about it in that way?